And welcome everybody. We're talking to Josh Ross today about marketing and photography and product photography. And Josh, tell us a little bit about your journey so far as a photographer there in Portland.
So, I don't know. My journey in, let's say, my journey in Portland has been, I landed here about 2 years ago. I had kind of always wanted to move, and we finally were able to make that happen. And it has definitely been a shift as far as my work, but I was able to hold on to a lot of the people that I was working with in LA. So I end up flying back there a lot. And then these days, a lot of people actually just ship me stuff, and I work on it, and sort of over email, and there's some back and forth, and I do it sort of on my own. Um, I also one of the big shifts when I came to Portland was when I really I pretty much stopped marketing any portrait work with people. I still do that work, but I just don't market it anymore. And I have a rep now, and they only rep product work, so he doesn't even show or to discuss any of the other people work that I have.
Excellent. Where is your rep located?
He's in LA. I've actually never met him in person, but he's somebody I met, I think, through social media originally, and then we just sort of stayed in touch for a lot of years. And this year he started something new, a different kind of agency, and he asked me to come on.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Having a rep is something that doesn't happen when you're first starting out, but when it does happen, it can really make all the difference.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it, and it's funny. I thought that I wouldn't. Like, I sort of felt like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like, I wasn't really out looking for a rep. But you know what? That little bug on the bottom of my email, it feels good every time I send it.
Yeah, I imagine it does. Absolutely. Um, so being in Portland, I would consider that a good small town for photography. Lots of design up there, lots and lots of advertising, regional and national coming out of Portland. Nike's there, right?
Nike is here. Nike and Adidas, actually.
Yeah. So, it's a pretty good town. It's better than Tucson or say Albuquerque. So it's pretty darn good town for photography. Now, tell us a little bit. I'd love to know a little bit about how you market yourself there in the Portland area. What's your sort of plan of attack?
So my plan of attack, and I sort of had a feeling you had said we were going to talk about this a little bit, and I was sort of thinking about it. And the thing that I always say, by far the best marketing is to shoot really good pictures and show them to people. And I know that sounds sort of simple, but it's not at all. And I don't, I just, it's just, that's the reality. I try to shoot as much as I can personal work. I really ideally would like to be doing one new portfolio picture a week, but I haven't hit that lately. I used to be able to do that. I'm not sure, what changed really, but whatever. I'm not doing that at the moment. So I shoot pictures, that I think are that I want to show, that I fit my style and fit the work that I want to be doing. And then I go out and I find companies that I think that they match with, and I show them the pictures. I hunt down who the right person to talk to is, and I start connecting with them. Sort of the arc is I actually use LinkedIn a lot, not for like the paid LinkedIn or anything like that. I don't send in mail or anything like that.
Hmm.
But a lot of times you just need a name, and you gotta try and figure out who is the person you're trying to talk to. Like what's the name of the art director or the creative director or the art buyer or whatever the title is. Who is it? And LinkedIn can be really good for that. Um, So let's say so I just shot that coffee picture that's right at the top there with the coffee pouring.
Yes.
So yes, I just finished that this week, I think. So I might go, okay, I think like what kind of companies would use a picture like that? Well, I don't know. Let's just say Starbucks. Starbucks is in Seattle, but um, okay, I'm gonna show this to Starbucks. So who like so I might go out to LinkedIn and just do a search for art buyer Starbucks, and limit it to Seattle maybe, and just see if a name comes up, if there's somebody that looks promising. And then once I have that name, then I'll go out and I'll start trying to find the format for the Starbucks emails. Because all the companies are like that. That'll be like, first name dot last name at starbucks.com or something like that. And once you've got a name and the format, then I usually will. There's a lot of services that'll let you test an email. It doesn't always work, and it seems like it's working less and less. It depends on how the server is configured. Um, but I'll usually test the email, and I'll see if I got the email that it works. And then I'll take that name, and I'll find, if there's any other information I can find about them, if they have a Twitter account or a LinkedIn account or anything like that. And I'll take all this information and I'll put it in. I have a database, and I'll put all this information in a database. And if I found them on LinkedIn, I'll usually send them a LinkedIn connection, and then I'll wait, let's say 2 days, and then I'll send them an email, and I'll say um, something along the lines of, I connected with you a couple days ago on LinkedIn, and I just wanted to follow up. I wanted to see if you had a few minutes to chat on the phone. And then at that point, I might also send them the picture. Maybe it's something like, I just shot this picture. I thought you might appreciate it. Do you have a few minutes to chat on the phone? Just something. It's a follow up, and it depends. I may or may not send the picture at that point. And I just want to say that through this, and it doesn't seem to matter the size of the company, and this could be a local Portland company, or it could be any company in the U.S. I mean, I'm using Starbucks as an example here, but it could be
Hmm.
anywhere in the U.S. Um, and they almost never respond to any of that. Sometimes they do, but they just don't. And it's nothing personal. It's not because my work's not good. It's just what it is. They probably got 100 other emails from people, and it's just what it is. It is what it is. And the point is not necessarily for them to respond, although certainly that's nice, and sometimes they do, and that's an easier path. Um, but in general, the point is now they've seen my name twice. Each time they had an opportunity to find out more information about me. When I send that email to them, it'll have my rep's name and links on there, and it'll have the links to my website address. And I use some Gmail plugins, or not, Chrome plugins,
Hmm.
that track all my emails, so I can see when people have opened my emails and if they've clicked on links and things like that. So I just pay attention to all this, and at this point, the point is not necessarily, again, it's not necessarily for them to respond. The point is for them to see me and get some recognition. And
Exactly.
then now, in a couple more days, or maybe the next week, or I don't know, whenever I have time, I will call them. It's got to be soon enough that they'll remember. So, otherwise you've lost out you've done the work for nothing. And I'll call, and you can almost never get through. But sometimes you get through, and actually, you get through a lot more than you'll get a response. Like your chances of actually talking to a person are much higher than getting a response from the emails, I would say.
Hmm.
Um, and then I just repeat this. If hopefully I talk to him, but if I don't talk to him, then I email him again and I say, hey, I emailed you last week, and I called you last week and I just wanted to follow up. I'd really love to see if you have a few minutes to talk sometime. Is there a time that works for you? And if I don't hear again, I might call again, and I just go back and forth. And hopefully you hear from him. Hopefully there's some connection, and you get to go forward with it. And if you get to talk to them, what I do, the idea is I go, you've had a chance to look at my work. I have, I'm contacting you because the work I do, I think, aligns with some of the work that you guys do, and I sent you something that, in specific that I just shot that, just really aligns up. And I just want to be on your radar. I'm gonna stay in touch with you from time to time via email, and when you have something that comes up, let me know. And you just get it's a handshake, if nothing. It's really that's all it is. They're almost never. I mean, I guess it happens, but I don't think it's ever happened to me that someone's like, "Oh, I have a project right now. We're gonna Um, I guess it has happened like once, but it just doesn't happen. Don't expect that to happen. Um, the idea is that you've emailed them, you've connected on LinkedIn, or you've connected on Twitter. Maybe you have called them, you've left them voicemail. They've looked at your website, they've seen some of your work. Like there's all this sort of critical mass building, and then that's it. I go back to my database, and every time I contact them in any way, whatever I do, I put in the date and I put in what happened, and then that way, like 6 months later, I can go, or a year later, I might contact them again and say, "Hey, it's been a while. It looks like I think we last talked maybe January of last year or something like that," and I keep it sort of casual. I don't really want to let on that I know exactly the date and what we talked about, but I want them to know that I have a sense of the last time that we talked, and that it's been a while. Um, and so I keep all those notes, and so I'll enter all that information in, and then I'll add them into my newsletter database. I use Mailchimp, and so I'll add them to my newsletter, and then that's about it. And I'll send out my newsletter. I try to do it every month, but it ends up being every 3 months. Um, and then the next time I shoot another, I categorize them in my database. I put tags. So like I have liquor or liquid or cosmetics or whatever the kind of stuff that I like to shoot and that I often am shooting. I tag them. And so the next time I shoot a coffee thing, I'll go and I'll look in my database and I'll bring up all the people that are tagged with, it wouldn't be coffee, but we could pretend it's coffee. All the people that are tagged with coffee, and I'll send them all an email and say, hey, you'll probably see this in my next newsletter, but I don't know when that's going to happen, and I just, this is really relevant to the work that you guys do, and this is something I just finished, so check it out. And that's all, and I don't expect an email back from them. Sometimes I get it. At that point, we have some kind of a relationship, so the return emails on that email are a lot more often. But yeah, that's pretty much the arc. I also, if they're in town, then instead of trying to get the phone call when I'm when I'm calling them and asking for the phone call, I'm asking for a meeting in person instead. But it's the same. It's otherwise exactly the same setup.
So the goal actually is to get work by doing what I think you're doing is basically building a brand, building your personal brand, the work you do, the way you contact them, the how many times you contact them, all the little messages you leave. You just build your brand, and you're trying to become top of mind. Correct?
That's exactly right.
Yep.
I had somebody like a business coach friend of mine, and he once said what you really want to do, like the idea is that you contact them the day before they're about to make a presentation about a project that's perfect for you.
Yes.
Now, obviously, you never know when that is, but you just try to contact them on a regular basis, and you can't contact them. Reps will talk about this too. You can't contact them when you have nothing. You can't just call them up and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" Like
hey, what's up?
You have to. Yeah, so that's why you shoot work all the time, because you always want to have a new reason to contact them.
Yes.
So you say, hey, I just did this new Gatorade thing, because that's what we're looking at right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really relevant to your brand, and check it out. If you have something, let me know. I'd love to get you a quote.
That's the absolute best way to do it. I love it. You're staying fresh, you're staying relevant, and you're working to be top of mind. As a gentleman, I'm calling myself a gentleman. That's a stretch. As a guy who's sat on the other side of the desk and been a creative director for nearly 10 years, I can tell you that most photographers don't do that. They send you irrelevant images, uh, or pieces of mail that have no relevance at all to your agency. We were medical technology, and we got everything from cars to fashion to architecture, and phone calls that were just like, "Hi, I was wondering if I could come show you my book." And we always tried to accommodate and see the books, but at the same time, it just there was no life to that. And I really like the way that you're approaching, very much making it a personal quest to be the right person for them.
I mean, I just figure there's so many people out there on both sides. There's so many photographers and there's so many buyers of photography that I don't why waste everyone's time? Like I'm wasting my time as well as theirs if I'm contacting the wrong person. And it wastes a lot of my time. There are times when I sometimes get it wrong. I mean, it just happens. Sometimes I'm contacting, like, sometimes it's a big agency, and I finally get through to somebody, and they go, oh, well, I'm actually the broadcast art director, and you need the print art director, or like, something like that, whatever it is. And,
Yeah,
it could be a month of trying to contact them, and it's like, I'm not going to waste that time if I don't have to.
that's true. That's true. It's you can find it, which is kind of interesting that you have a rep now. That's their job, in many ways, but I'm sure your rep still expects you to market.
Yeah, so my rep has a very interesting model, which I think is really cool. And it's one of the reasons that I decided to go with him is he only represents product photographers, and he has a whole lot of them. So a traditional rep is like, a fashion, a food, a product,
Hmm.
whatever. And they go in and they try to hard sell whatever agency, like, oh, you need food. Well, this is the food guy for you. Instead, my rep goes and says, if you need product work, no matter what kind of product work you need, we have somebody. And tries to have a breadth of people. And then along with that comes that it's not as it's a little bit different relationship between him and I. So he's like, you can have another rep if you want, and you do all your own marketing, and I'm allowed to like I can have my own clients that he's not involved with, which is very unusual for a rep. Um, and then anything that he brings me, he takes a percentage of, and he works on, and he helps me. And then anything there's times when I bring him some stuff, and more I'm doing that a lot as I'm just getting to know him a little bit. It's like everything I just bring him. But I do all the same marketing that I always did, and then I reach out to him to either close it. If I'm asked for a quote, then I turn it over to him and I hope that he closes it, or to find the people that I wouldn't have otherwise found because I'm only one person and I only can do what I can do, and there are a million people out there that I'm not contacting, and maybe they're perfect for me and I don't know, and I'm with him because he has those relationships.
Cool. And you know what? You want a happy rep. You
Yeah,
want a happy rep. A happy
I mean,
rep brings more work.
and at this point, another reason that I have to always be, a rep relationship is in some ways the same relationship as any other buyer of art. If I don't, if they don't have anything to show for me, or if they don't hear from me for a long time, then he's a human being. He forgets about me. So I got to shoot stuff and show it to him as much as I got to shoot stuff and show it to other clients.
And you said at one point you were trying to do a shot a week, right?
I was doing trying to. So for a long time, I was able to do a shot a week, or at least, yeah, I was able to do a shot a week. These days I'm not so much.
Or is it
And
because part of it because you're busy?
yeah, part of it's because I'm busy. I just have a lot going. I have a kid now. I have a 2-year-old, and I just have a lot going on. Outside of just photography. So things have slowed down as much as like, my whole life it's not like I've done anything besides art. So my whole life has been, you know, like my hobby was my job, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's a little less like that than it used to be. So I'm shooting sort of personal work a little bit less, or the personal work that I'm shooting is less on target. So I show it, but I don't show it to the same. It's not like it's not gonna probably get me commercial clients. I mean, it might. There's always those stories, but pictures of my kids are good, but um, it's just a different
Cool. Cool. And are you carrying a printed portfolio?
No. So I used to have a printed portfolio. As a designer, I used to make these portfolios that were, I think 8 by 8, and they were like, 10 pieces, and then covers and a resume in them, and they were bound with screw posts. So I would print them out on heavyweight mat, and I would glue them back to back with spray mount, and I would crease them and fold them and punch the holes and put the screw holes through, and then or the screw posts through, and then I would always bring a bunch of those, and when I had a meeting, I would give out one to the person because they were small. So I would give out one to the other person, and I would hold on to one, and then I would leave them with it at the end. And my background as a designer was always like packaging work, and uh, I did a lot of physical mock-ups. So when I first became a photographer, I had an 11 by 17 book that I think it was they called the Ice 9 portfolio. It's
Yep.
not expensive. It's just like it's a semi-transparent front and back. And I would basically do the same thing. I would print out, it was bigger now, so I'd use 13 by 19 13 by 19 paper. But it was the same idea. I would cut it out, I would print it out and spray mount it back to back and punch the holes and crease it and bend it and do the whole thing. And it was really nice. Uh, and people were impressed with it. But at a certain point, it was time to upgrade. I was going to do something else. I had somebody, an AIGA, I think president of AIGA in Los Angeles at the time, was someone that I knew from school, and he checked it out and he gave me some suggestions, and I was going to make a change. And right about the time I was trying to decide, like, what am I gonna do? Um, a an agency I had referred a whole lot of work to. I just got an iPad in the mail one day, and I was like, wow. So what I did was I took the iPad and I had a custom case built that matches my branding. It doesn't actually have my name or logo on it, but it's all white, and it's landscape. It holds the iPad landscape. It doesn't have a hole for the camera on or anything like
Mhm.
that, and it closes with a magnet. And when you hold it and when it's closed, it looks like a book because it's done in book. It's a book binding style. It looks like a physical um, portfolio, and everyone is fooled, like almost without doubt. And then when you open it, because it's got the magnet, um, it opens to the picture. Like the iPad comes on and there's the picture there, and all they have to do is swipe. So it works just like a physical book, but you get
Mhm.
all the advantage of having an iPad. And so that's what my portfolio is these days. Um, some other notes about that are I don't use the iPad I don't then take it home and play with it. There are no apps on it, except what you're forced to have on it. The main screen, like, so if they were to hit the home button, which happens, people do it all the time. Like they mean to swipe or they mean to get out of it and they hit the home button. And so I've advised students a lot on this. A lot of times I'll do that. I'll look at it and I'll check, and then they'll just have all their apps and they're like whatever their personal stuff. Instead, I have my branding. It's just my logo and the colors, and it's a wallpaper that I did, and it just sits there. And the only thing on the screen is at the bottom. It has the app for the portfolio, and I haven't found one that is perfect, to be honest. So whichever one works for you. But I have it. Whatever I'm using at the moment is there at the bottom, and then there's also a video. There's an icon for the video because I had one a while ago. I had a video where I showed the retouching I did for something, and that's it. So I just mention that because whenever I look at student portfolios and they show me iPads, almost always they're using PDFs, which is a terrible way to show your work on an iPad. Use a JPEG. Now, with photographers, that's not going to be as big an issue, but design students, they always output PDFs. And then you hit the home button, and there's all their junk, and there's like a naked chick as the wallpaper. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so you got to look at it as your printed book. Just because it's an iPad doesn't mean it's also your, like, whatever else you do with it. It sits on my shelf. If I'm not actively showing it, it just, that's where it sits. And then yeah, I really wanted it to still look and feel and work like a book. I don't use any of the apps that are complicated in there.
Sure.
Some of them they use like do like a swipe and a dot and then it does this, and it's like I don't use any of that. All it should do is swipe. When you open it, there should be a picture, and you flip the picture, and there's another picture, and that's it. Don't get complicated with it.
Cool. That's exactly right. Exactly right. I'm seeing more and more photographers using the little minis for that too. The little Mac Mini.
Yeah, if I hadn't gotten a free iPad, well, I don't know. At that when I got it, I have an iPad 2, and when I got it, that was kind of the thing. At this point, I would probably use a Nexus 10. They're cheaper. The screen is at least as good, as not better. I don't know where the iPad development is right now with their screen,
Right.
but whatever.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
can
they're
get the
great.
cases. Yeah, you didn't used to be able to get the cases for the Nexus, but now you can get the cases. And there's an app that I use on my phone. I have a Nexus phone, and there's an app called, let's see here, Quick Pick. It's free, and it does exactly what I wanted to do. It just shows the pictures.
Yes.
And
I
so if I had
understand I understand
if I had a
that new Kindle Fire is pretty nice too.
The Kindle Fire is nice. My son has a Kindle Fire, although it is a first generation, but I would never ever buy a Kindle Fire. It just it doesn't have, it's just, there's so many things about it, and maybe it's better now because it's not, I have the
Yeah,
first gen, and
they just brought one
it's,
out Monday with
yeah, I
a
saw
real
that,
high
and
res
they have the
screen.
kids one. I looked at the kid one, and it looks pretty sweet. I don't know. The Nexus products are so good that I can't really, I don't think I would look elsewhere.
Cool. That's great. That is a really comprehensive discussion, and I am thrilled that I have so many Project 52 folks on here listening to this. It's great because Josh is a working photographer. This is what he does. So this is he's not an internet star. Sorry, Josh, um, but I don't
I
think
would
you've
like to
ever
be, so.
I don't think you've ever tried to be an internet star. So
No, not really. I would love to be an internet star, but the problem is, and this is the same thing that I tell anyone that, you inevitably run into people that go, oh, you should do wedding photography, or you should pick whatever photography they feel like you should do. Um, and this is the same thing with the internet star thing. Anything you do at this point connected to photography is incredibly, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Cutthroat. It's an incredibly, there's intense competition. That means you have to be the best at it if you're going to do well. And so you only have so much time in the day. So a lot of people, they think of wedding photography from the 80s when you could just kind of be a wedding photographer and you could make money. My aunt and uncle do video production, and that's how they started. It's a classic, like that's what you used to be able to do. They just would go out and they would do wedding videos, and they built they made a bunch of money and they built a big following, and then they switched to commercial when they were ready to. And that's just not, you can't do that anymore, and you can't do that with being an internet star either. You have to
No.
dedicate yourself, and if you're dedicating yourself to one thing, you don't have time to dedicate yourself to something else. So you might as well do what you like doing.
That's very true. Let's chat about the life cycle of a product shoot.
Absolutely.
And it's a different process in many ways than a fashion shoot or a people shoot, or lifestyle shoot. It's kind of a different thing, and there's different communications that goes on. So I know you've had a little bit of time to think about the that one cool product shot story that maybe you can pull from different ones. But let's talk about an involved product shot. What is the communication process? How do you how do you get information from the client? How much of the idea is theirs? How much is yours? And how do you communicate during the shoot?
So it can vary. I mean, I have seen stuff, honestly bigger than or like the stuff that I typically like. I've been a retoucher for somebody that was shooting Acura, and and then I've been with on the design side for GMC stuff, and those are like, I mean, I could run through that. Those are about as complex as they get. Um, my stuff tends to be a little less complex. For one thing, they often come to me. I mean, it varies. Sometimes they come to me with a very fleshed out idea, although it tends to be simple in those cases. On white. A lot of times they want it on white, and it's just simple. But that's what they want. They also will come to me with, sort of an idea, and they'll bounce stuff off, and we'll go back and forth a little bit.
Right.
That's honestly my favorite, although it's also the hardest. I mean, it's much easier when they just come to you and say, this is what we want, and then you figure it out. Um, Not only in terms of like actually doing the work is it harder when they want to work with you to figure out the concept, but it's you also have to be confident. Like you're gonna say something, and you can't be like, well, I kind of. You have to like make a statement and let it fall and see what they think. Um, so there's that. But you just you get used to it. But so yeah, we usually there'll be some amount of back and forth of what they have in mind, or I might make some suggestions, or they'll come back and forth, and I like to see some layout if I can. Sort of a sense of what they're doing with it, so that I can help figure stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I like to, one of the things that I love about product photography is that you can kind of shoot it ahead of time. I mean, you can't always do it, but and your vision is not going to be exactly the same as their vision, so you're still going to shoot it there the day of. Um, but you can test stuff, and you can do your own thing, and you can make decisions ahead of time, so that when you go into the studio, it is worked out the way you know what you're doing. You don't always have that luxury, I'll call it.
Mm-hmm.
But when I do, when I have the opportunity, I will do that ahead of time. And I might not. It's not like I'm gonna, finish a completely produced, perfect, ready to go image. But I will. A lot of a lot of what is product photography is sitting in the studio, and I mentioned this a little bit last time, trying to figure out reflections, or you just sort of sit there and you look at the product and you go, how am I going to compose this? And then once you figured out like a sense of how you're going to compose it, now where do I put the bounce cards and where do I put the lights and what do I, and so I will run through as much of that stuff as makes sense to do ahead of time, so that when the day of the shoot, I have a sense, um, and I'm not completely just starting from scratch. Sometimes I'll start from scratch and it's not the end of the world, but it's just always a little slower, and you never know how much time things are going to take, um, as far as either figuring it out or actually shooting it. Styling stuff takes forever sometimes, or it's really fast, and you just never know. And so the more you can do on the front end, where you're just, you can quickly get down to the hard work. That's what I do. And then once you're shooting for the client, they go. There's a lot of thing of them going, oh, but you're gonna take this out, right? Like you're gonna fix this, like huge horrible reflection, and you got to be like, yeah, no, I see that, don't worry, like this is sort of the sense of what I'm going to do, and I might drop stuff into Photoshop quickly, or do things in Lightroom to give them a sense, or just so they have a sense. And I like to have a sense too, because the worst thing you could do is be like, oh yeah, we'll take care of that in post, and then be like, oh god, I don't know how to take care of this in post.
Hmm.
Or I just don't, it's just not quite right, or whatever. Like I like to have it sort of figured out. So for their purposes and for my purposes, we talk about what we can do, and I try to do as much in camera as I can, but there's a certain amount of like, okay, I'm gonna do this in post, and this is how we're gonna do it. And then they style stuff. That's really the only reason that I need an art director, or a buyer or whatever, that I need a client there, is because I need them to style it the way they think it should be. It's not that I can't style stuff, and I can, objectively speaking, I do a great job, but your vision is never quite their vision.
No,
Um, and
that's so
so
true.
it's just, when people ship me stuff, one of the biggest things we end up doing is a quarter turn to the left. No, 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 oh, too far. A little bit right, a little bit back, a little, and it's just like when they're there with you, they just do it, and then it's there, and it's perfect. And sometimes I'll say, oh, well, what about this? Are you sure that, have you noticed this? Have you noticed that? And they go, okay, yes, I have, or no, I haven't, and they make adjustments, but they do it, and then I shoot it, and I always shoot tethered, and they see the work, and we pack up and go. And then on the end, I mean, for me, and I don't know, my experience with like I said, I have experience with automotive, like high-end automotive photography, and that stuff is, I work similar to that. It's just incredibly post-intensive. So it's the actual capturing of the images is, maybe half of the work. Um, and then, so after that, then I go back and I put everything together and I do all the retouching, and I get it to where I think it's right, and then I show it to them, and sometimes they have adjustments that they want, sometimes they don't. Can't
This
say it's overwhelmingly one or the other.
and the set
Um,
never comes down until it's approved, right?
so I am often shooting in a rented studio if I'm with a client. So I have to take this shut down. But yes, anytime that I have the opportunity, I don't touch anything. I don't breathe on the camera until it's approved,
Yes.
because you, it's just like the slightest things. You would think that you have a, I don't have the best tripod, but I have a good tripod. And if I'm worried about it, I might have a sandbag on the tripod, and, everything is locked down. You would think you could open just as an example, or let me think, like plug in the sync cable without moving it. But you can't. I'm telling you, you cannot. If you want it
Yeah.
to be like, if you want it to be where you just layer it, where you just put two layers and then use a mask and erase one, and it's seamless, and you don't have to do more work than that,
Yep.
you can't touch that camera. You can't touch the shutter. You can't focus. You can't nothing. You don't breathe on it. So yeah, as much as I can, if possible, I don't move anything until it's approved. Because and then the other thing is sometimes they might, like especially when I'm shooting at home, like when I'm shooting and they're not there, they might go, God, it all looks really good, but if we could just move this one thing a quarter inch. And if you've taken down the set, you now have to try and recreate everything before you make one small change. And sometimes I try not to do this, but sometimes it happens. Sometimes I've got things suspended with fishing line, and it's like this complex. It's like a spider web. There's like 5 different points where it's all like, you pull a little here and you pull a little there to get things to move, like a puppet, one of those old school puppets, right? And if you take that down, you'll never. It's like you'll never get that again.
No, never going to happen.
No. So yeah, I do try not to move stuff as much as I can.
I'm going to invite the attendees. Now's the time to start putting in your questions for Josh. And I have a question here to. So if you want to type your questions in the questions below, we'll start taking them. Josh, you have a really definable style. I mean, you've worked very diligently to create a super graphic, super clean style. When clients come to you, do they come to you and expect you to shoot that style?
So the wisdom is always that define your style, show that work, and the work you show is the work you're gonna get. And that's what I was always like as an art director. If you're looking like if you're gonna go get somebody to shoot something for you, then you're gonna find the guy that does what you want and has done it 100 times. Now, and so that's the way that I structure, like that's the way that I act as if that's the reality. Um, and I think that it is at a certain point. I think that when you get to the level where you're working on national or international projects and they are calling you and they don't really care the money and they don't really care where you are, that I think that that is how it is. However, at the point where I'm at, the reality is much of it's about the relationship that I've built. So I've built a relationship and they know me and they like my work. So they just call me for whatever, which is awesome. I mean, that's great. That's the place to be. Um, it's a little, it's incongruous to the advice that I would give or that I've gotten, which is that expect to get the work that you show. And I still would give that advice. However, the reality is it's also about the relationships.
That's very true. Great. All right, we've got some questions coming in here, and
Okay.
Mary would like to know what your camera and favorite lens is.
So, I'm not someone that has worked with a million cameras and has a million lenses. Um, Don, you have a pretty wide breadth of both of those, and Kirk Tuck is the king of like I've got a new camera this week and a whole new lens setup and like whatever. But I
Kirk
have
Kirk actually needs professional help.
yes. So I mean I watch his stuff but I'm not like that at all. I started shooting Canon because when I started shooting, no one on professionally on the commercial side shot Nikon. Like no one. I'd never seen someone use a Nikon. There were no full frame Nikons, and everyone used Canon or Hasselblad. Um, and so when I started shooting, um, my wife actually bought my the first professional camera I had, and a friend of ours who's a very prominent fashion photographer, um, went with her to the camera store, and they opened the pro doors, and uh, discounts came flowing, and he made suggestions, and so I got a Canon, and I have always shot Canon. So I have a Canon 1DS Mark II now. The last time I was going to upgrade would have been at the time of the 5D Mark II, and that would have been a better camera. But I had a 5D Mark I, and I despised the focusing system, and so I decided to get an older camera with better, other features. You know, the sensor tech wasn't as good, but I tend to shoot f/22 ISO 100 if I can, although ISO 200 or up to 400 sometimes. Um, so you know, I don't need cutting edge sensor tech. Um, so yeah, I have a 1DS Mark II, and then as far as lenses, I've only ever owned two lenses. I had the Canon 50 1.4 and the Canon 24 to 70 2.8L. Um, and so it's again, I don't have a lot of experience with different stuff. I would probably like to pick up a 100 macro, but I don't have that. I use the 24-70 most of the time because I like to get as long a focal length as I can to keep things from distorting. And yeah, that's what I use.
Business wise, Tanja would like to know money management. What are you doing behind the scenes as far as your accounting and stuff? Do you use a special accounting software to bill clients?
So I use an app called, or it's not an app, I guess. It's a Mac software called Billings, and I
Mm-hmm.
use that for keeping track of for invoicing, essentially. It doesn't do the you know, you could use QuickBooks, and it would do more. And there's no good reason that I don't use QuickBooks, but I don't. I use Billings, and it generates the invoices for me. And then as I put together my quotes, or I built a template in InDesign, and I just put that together. Um, and then the accounting, I really just there's no magic to it. I have a bank account that is for a bank account and a credit card that is only for the business, and then everything that flows through there, you know, that's connected to um, I'm blanking on the name of it right now. The the online it connects to your accounts, and it'll give you all kinds of information about your accounts. It's not an actual bank. It connects to your online banking. Um, and I just look at that and I generate reports as needed. Um, but really, you know, I use an accountant for the actual like doing the taxes. But it's fairly simple. I Everything I spend and everything I make goes through one account, and then I have the invoice software, which can tell me how much I've invoiced and how much I've collected in a year. So that's it.
Cool. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Sergio, who's down in South America, one of my P-52 folks, would like to know: would you share with us the biggest mistake you think you've ever made?
Sure. I'm trying to think.
I was thinking to myself,
um,
of course he will.
Of course. No, I don't mind it. I don't mind doing it at all. I'm trying to think of what the best example is. Um, there's a myriad of examples before I got the job. I'll give a couple of those. I once was, I once told somebody, it was an agency. It was this weird agency. I don't mean weird in a bad way. Just it's not a normal, like the way they work is different. And the owner he was considering bringing me on as like their photographer, and I was just going to be the agency photographer. But the way he did it is all the people he brought on had like their own presence, and so he would just bring them in house. And I had this phone call with him, and he goes, um, you know, how is business? And I said, I'm barely making it. Now, I wasn't barely making it. That wasn't the reality. The reality was I was doing great. But I, I know, like, as a photographer who works for yourself, you always feel like you're barely making it.
Mm-hmm.
And it just came out. And he goes, oh, okay. And he politely ended the call, and I never talked to him again. So there's that. Another time, more recently, and I can't say that this is not as bad a mistake, and I don't know that it was the reason that I didn't get the job, but I know that it was a mistake, so I'm going to share it. Which is, so they had narrowed down the field to three photographers, and they were calling us, and it was not a shoot for a lot of money. Um, but whatever, they were being careful about it. And it was a shoot that I wanted. It was just a cool, it was something I wanted to shoot. Um, it wasn't a big brand. It wasn't a lot of money. It was just something it was aligned with who I am. Um, and they called me and they wanted to know how I was going to shoot it. And this is a very common call. Um, they just want to talk to you about shooting it beforehand. And I asked, what I did wrong was I asked questions as if I had already had the job. Now, in some ways that's good, but I asked like, well, how big is this? Because I need to rent the right gear. Like this is bigger than my gear, so I need to get the right gear. So how many inches is it? Like how long is it? Because I had a little feeling that I was having a hard time finding the right equipment. Portland's a little tough for renting gear. In LA, you go to Sammy's and they had anything you could ever want, and it was no big deal. And if that Sammy's happened to be out of it for some reason, you just go across town and go to the other Sammy's, and it was fine. But in Portland, it was like the largest scrim I could rent was 72 inches. And I had a feeling that this product was bigger than 72 inches. And I asked her that question. And when I think back on it, like it was smart. Like I was being, from my point of view, like in my head, I was like, I want to make sure I have the right equipment. And there
Right.
was no doubt that I was going to be able to get it and that I was going to be able to make it happen no matter what. But what she wanted to hear was, I'm going to use a scrim, I'm going to use it from behind, and I'm going to use it from above, and I've done this 100 times, and no problem. And then after I had the job, I could have asked her how long it was and gotten the right scrim. But I asked her on the phone call, and I just feel like that wasn't a good move.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. They think you're jumping ahead.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was just tricky, and it was, you know what? If the other two people didn't ask that, then it would look like they knew exactly what they were doing, and I didn't.
Yeah.
And that's not the reality, and I just don't think it was strategic. I just think it was, just tell them, just know that you're gonna get, like, you're gonna be able to do it. And those little details you can ask on the next call. You don't need to do it on that call.
Yep.
Um, and then the last story that I will share on this is so I shot a celebrity, and I don't have a lot of celebrities in my portfolio, but I have a fair amount. None of them are like, none of them are in a movie right now. I will tell you that, but they're big enough. They're big enough that they have their wants and their needs, and they are what they are. And so I shot this celebrity, and I had everything was exactly set up ahead of time. I had my assistant, my best assistant that I love working with, and I'm mentioning that because it's part of the story. Um, and I work with her because she is really good. She's an amazing photographer, and I work with her because I know that when she looks at the picture, I don't have to double check it. If she says it's right, it's right. And I shot this celebrity, and everything was ready to go ahead of time, and everything was set up, and I knew that I was going to have one shot. It was the typical celebrity story. You shoot what you can get, and then they leave, and that's it. And so they came on set, and I shot, and my camera died. And it was a stupid thing, but this is why you have a backup. Now I had a backup. I switched, and I actually decided to use I used a 5D Mark III, and mistake one, I hadn't tested with that camera before. And when I held it in my hand, although it was close, it was not the same as my camera. And so my camera died, and I switched out the camera. I did it all very professionally in the way you're supposed to do it. I picked up the new camera. I started shooting. The whole thing took, a minute maybe, or it felt like 10, but it was probably 30 seconds. It
Hmm.
was just, give me the camera. Okay, I'm shooting. Here, it's plugged in. It's shooting. And I started shooting, and the focus points weren't. I like to shoot with a single focus point, and I like to focus on the eyes every time. And it was like that zone focusing or whatever that newer cameras do. And I handed it back to my assistant, and I said, "Fix the focusing. I need just a single point." Um, and she was like, "I don't know how to do that." And I was like, "Okay." So no problem. I just took it back and I said, I was shooting at like f14. It should have been enough. And I wasn't right up close. It should have been fine. So I just was like, okay, I'm just gonna do this. And I just shot, and I just shot as many pictures as I could, and then he said, "Okay, we're done." And now I like to, the way I like to actually work is to, oh, okay, let's just take a quick look and look at the pictures on, that's why I shoot tethered. I'll take a quick look, I'll glance through. I won't look really closely. Ideally, my assistant is shooting also, but remember the camera had died and the tethering system had died too, and that was actually why the camera had died. It was fine. All I needed to do was pull the battery, and it was fine. But I didn't at the time. I was under pressure. Um, and so he left, and I looked at the pictures, and I thought, these are out of focus. I don't have an in focus picture. And I thought, oh my God. And it was like the worst feeling in the world. And now my assistant said, she's told me right then, this is fine. You have what you need. And I went, I don't. And I was being the perfectionist, and I was stressed, and I was a little nervous because it was a celebrity, and it was kind of a big job, and I just didn't listen to her. And I went back to the art director, and I said, I need to see if we can shoot him again. And we waited all day, and we did not get to shoot him again. And I went home. I was in Portland at that time, so I flew home, and I like basically had a panic attack on the plane. And I got off the plane, and my battery was dead. I couldn't look at the pictures. I got off the plane when I was changing planes. I ran to a battery outlet. I plugged it in. Now it'd been hours, right? The art director's dealing with phone calls about like I had requested this guy back, and I don't have the pictures. And now I plug in the computer. The pictures come up, and yeah, some of them were out of focus. But you know what? She was right. I had what I needed, and in the end, I delivered great work. But because I didn't trust myself, I like put the art director and myself, and like there was all this stress, and it made it look like I didn't know what I was doing, and there was no reason for that. Take a deep breath, listen to the people that you trust, and just do what you need to do.
Yep. That's what you do.
There you go.
How much, you don't do a lot of compositing in your work, right? Most of it's
I,
pretty much from camera.
no, I do almost every shot as a composite,
Oh,
even
it
the people.
is.
Yeah, I composite everything. I shoot stuff. I shoot a lot of so often my composites are things where I've shot it in camera, but then composited it anyway. And I think that's what you're thinking of.
Oh, okay.
So like I'll shoot it against a colored background, but then I'll take the background out and replace it in Photoshop. And I do that so that I can it's the best of both worlds. You do it in camera so you can get all the little nuance, but then you replace it in Photoshop so you can control it exactly in post.
Excellent. When you shoot for like the Johnny Walker shot,
Sure.
has any brand ever had a problem with their image being in your portfolio?
No, not at all.
No, it's
So
rarely
they can
happens.
No, I don't think I mean, they wouldn't have a leg to stand on. You're allowed to shoot it. Legally, you're allowed to shoot
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
Um,
Legally, you bought the bottle of whiskey.
right,
You can do whatever you want with it. Yes.
right.
You
Now
just
I
can't
can't
say
say,
that you shot it for them.
right. You can't say, well, it would be, you could, I guess, although you'd be a jerk, they'd be like, you didn't shoot that for, you'd look like a fool. But I don't think that you could, and I could be wrong about this. I don't think you'd be in legal trouble for saying that you shot it for them.
No, no,
What you
no.
would What
You'd
you
be
would be in legal trouble for is any implied endorsement. So you want to be careful. You want to be careful about, oh, Johnny Walker loved this, and I'm their go-to photographer.
yeah,
Not that anyone listening would do that, but that's where you can get in legal trouble. But
absolutely.
no, they don't mind them shooting it. They've always been receptive, in fact. Um, I have heard that they mind if you comp up an ad. And I actually had a discussion with my rep about this right now, and it's something I'm thinking about because I'm working with a fashion photographer, and she's doing some beauty work, and I did product work, and we were considering comping up an ad. And I don't know that we're going to do it because um, brands can be a little touchy about their their brand image. So if
I
you
think
comp up an ad and it's really good, then they don't have control over it. They get a little touchy.
because you're infringing on their brand, and so yeah, that can be a problem, especially if you do it and you have copy. However,
Right.
if you do it and have lorem ipsum, um, they're it's obviously a mock-up.
Yeah, I think what we're gonna do is we're just gonna have the images, which is what
Yep.
I always do now. Like what
Yep.
I've always done is just have the images. From a design perspective, I don't like to comp up like I don't like to in any way pretend that I did something for a company I didn't.
Exactly.
So if you show a picture of a Johnny Walker bottle, then people are free to jump to their own conclusions whether you shot that for them or not.
Right.
But if you actually mock up an ad, it can really look like you did shoot it for them. So I would recommend not mocking up an ad, and I don't
Right.
think that I'm going to. But just shooting the products, they don't care. In fact, like I said earlier, I typically will shoot the product and then show it to them. And I did show the Johnny Walker stuff to you know, the relevant people with Johnny Walker or whatever their in beverage or whatever their bigger brand is.
Hmm. Are you planning to move to medium format?
Sure, as soon as I win the lottery of either the actual scratcher lottery or the big job.
The big, yep.
I
Yep.
mean, I would love to shoot medium format, just because I love you know, it's interesting actually. For the product work, I really wouldn't need the medium format. I already comp stuff together so that the megapixel it's already huge. It's much bigger than the actual my sensor size. Um, and I don't know that there's a need to like for quality purposes
Hmm.
have medium format. But I love shallow depth of field and large. It's not actually shallower, but you know, like that look of medium format. And so I
Yes.
would love to have medium format just to shoot with, but it's not something that makes sense to my business at this point. So I'm not going to spend minimum 8,000 or 9,000, I guess is the minimum.
Yes. What about now you rent a studio, right?
Yeah, so I have my own studio, but I don't like to bring clients there. It doesn't have a bathroom. It's not always super clean. Sometimes I have bikes in there. You know, I could probably make it work. But if I'm shooting with a client there, I usually would just rent a studio.
Excellent. And Virginia wants to know what's the percentage of your work local to Portland?
Very little. I'm trying to think of anything that is, in fact. Um, I have built some relationships here in Portland. Uh, I'm trying to think if I can't think of anything that is actually um, done for a brand in Portland.
What about how do you find your pricing? How do you? That's always a difficult when you're first starting out.
Sure. Actually, you know what? Back to the last question. I don't have it in my portfolio, but I shot for Portland Monthly. Um, and I think that's the only thing I did for anyone in Portland. Most of
Hmm.
my work is still in LA. So pricing. I love the A Photo Editor blog, and Wonderful Machine does a sort of guest column on there, if you will, where they run through um, quoting jobs. Like they talk about what the request was, why they priced it that way, what the usage was, and all of it. And then if there's negotiation, they talk about like how they negotiated and why. Um, so I have used that a lot to like I've looked at that and said, oh, this is sort of like kind of what I'm doing, and then I also for usage I will look at I would go to Getty and price out uh, uh, um, rights managed image. Any rights managed image, their pricing will be the same, and then just punch in the usage that whatever they're wanting is, and that's your
Hmm.
usage price. And you could just go with that. Although I tend to give discount. You have to. It gets a little. It's not usually as easy as just transcribing that number because often they're wanting you to shoot more than one image or so you give them some discounts and you work it out, but that's a good baseline. um,
Excellent.
when I had opportunities before I had a rep, but when I had opportunities to quote on big projects, I found a rep that would take like you could just pay her to do a quote for you, and I did that, and then I did that a couple times, but just even having that was super helpful for, then there were 5 other times, or whatever, but there were a bunch of other times that then I was able to sort of use what she had done, and I had a sense that it would made sense. Um, and then what? I guess that's about it. But yeah, Getty, a photo editor, um, a hired rep. And then there's also some amount of, you don't have to feel bad about pricing something the way you want to price it for a project you want to work on.
Yep, that's so true.
Like
That
I really don't buy into the like you're ruining the and then maybe people are disagree with me right now, but I don't buy into the like the you're ruining the whole of photography by doing something too low. If it's a good brand and you quote them too low, they will just not use you because they know you don't know what you're doing. And if it's a brand that is willing to that is shopping based on price, they're going to shop based on price. And if you really want that in your book, for whatever reason, you really want to work with them, then price it at something they're going to pay. And that's fine.
I, I also tell people don't stay up at night thinking that you may have left money on the table. Price the job for what you are happy to get.
That's right.
And if it makes you happy to get that money and they're happy with your work and they hire you and you do the job, then you're good. Let
That's
it
exactly right.
yep, let it go. Life's too short.
So
I
I tend to always be more expensive than basically anyone. Like anyone I'm quoting against, I tend to be the most expensive, and I am happy to be there. As I can come down, or sometimes I'll lose the job, and that's sad, but it is what it is. I would rather be seen as high end.
Premium.
Yep.
Yep, you can't go into the Jaguar dealer and talk them down.
Nope.
No, no.
So, all right. Next up.
I think that we are pretty. How much repeat? Oh, here's what we get. Um, what do you do for inspiration?
I look at lots and lots of photography. So I keep a delicious page of photographers that I like, and I tag them in however I want to tag them. And anytime I'm gonna do a shoot, whether it's paid or for myself, I look at lots of people that are doing similar stuff. I don't know, it's similar in some
Mm-hmm.
small way, and I just look at it, and I look at a lot of stuff, and I decide what I like, and then I decide what I'm gonna do. More and more as I'm getting um, farther in my career and more specialized, I find that, and this, I mean, I'm happy with this, although it is more difficult. I find that there aren't people doing the sort of thing that I am going to do. Um, so in that case, I look at my own work. I look at my portfolio and I look through and I go, I spend a lot of time on sequencing in my images, and I go, well, there's kind of a hole here. This transition's not great. What kind of image might be good for that? And I just think of something, and then I go look at what other people have done, or and or I go, God, I'd love to shoot more action sports. So what kind of stuff could I shoot? Well, I could shoot, and I just think of stuff, and then I look at lots of photography, and I pick up something that sort of is going to work for me.
Excellent, excellent. Well, that's cool. Brett wanted to know if you travel out of state to shoot, or if most of your shooting's done locally.
Oh, well, I mean, as per our earlier question, there's essentially none of it done locally at this point. Hopefully that'll change over time, but
No, no, I
I
mean the
shoot.
shooting, the actual physical shooting.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, so I shoot in LA, fairly often. Um, and so yeah, that's how to. I mean, that's where I used to live, so I go back and stay with people. I don't have to stay in a hotel, and I know where everything is. But yeah, I shoot in LA. I've never flown to just some other state that I not aware of. You know, just some state in the country. But I do fly to LA to shoot.
Excellent. Well, Josh, it's been fantastic to have you on here, my friend.
Yeah, I
This
really
is
enjoy it, and hopefully people got some good stuff out of it.
unbelievably great information. Just really, really fantastic. I just realized we've been looking at that same pair of shoes. I've been so listening to what you're saying, I forgot to keep going. By the way, this is really a fun project.
Yeah,
Um,
I loved that project. I did it all, and I used to run a lot. These days I'm cycling instead of running. But um, I had a relationship with a shoe store, and I said, "Can I come to your place and shoot a bunch of shoes?" And I did it in an afternoon when they said they'd be slow, and I just moved through, and I shot
I
all these shoes.
I had no idea. I had no idea that the bottoms of shoes looked like that. Great, great project. Well, I'm going to let you go, my friend.
All right.
Everybody, Josh Ross, joshrosscreative.com.
Yes, and
And
for everyone listening, feel free to hit me up on social media. I love to chat about stuff. I hope you can hear I love to talk, and I'm happy to chat about whatever if you want to find me online.
absolutely. And Josh, I'm gonna send you an invite to our Project 52 group,
Okay, sounds
and
cool.
over there on Facebook. And if you'd like to jump in there now and then, we'd love to have you.
Sounds great. Thanks for talking to me, and I look forward to doing it again sometime.
All right. Well, thank you, and thanks everybody for coming out. That's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.